So, David, I want to first talk about Edufocal. They've been suspended yet again. And the last time they were suspended was around this same time last year. So, what's happening?
So one thing that I think we need to just clarify and just explain to the viewers is the obligations or requirements of being a public listed company. So as a public listed company, a PLC, you are required to publish your audited financials in a defined time period, right? So in Jamaica, companies can elect to file within 60 days or 90 days. Once you miss that timeline, there's a 90-day countdown after that, whereby if you do not submit your audited financials within that timeline, you can be suspended. So it is when JC will suspend you, it means that they can. So, during 2023, for example, Separate, would have submitted its audited financials at the end of August when, they were due from March. The JC now suspended them, but in the case of iCrates, for example, where companies were given and their audited financials were late, they were suspended. So in his Edifocal, their audited financials were due from the end of February, I think March 1 actually, and 90 days would have ended around end of May. So, because they haven't submitted those financials, that's why the JC suspended them. In terms of, just the company's, chance to bounce back, I think it really comes down to not just refocusing the business model, but just, looking back at the overall strategy of the company overall, because we're in an environment right now whereby AI is going to be, or should I say, bring lots of slop. And the reality is there is still a purpose or place for businesses or firms that provide value of trust and veracity. So although if persons can quickly ask AI, what is this, what is that, you're still going to need persons to actually verify this information to make sure that what you're getting or being told is actually correct, because AI is still learning, still in the developmental stages. But in terms of Edifocal, they're trying to work on Quisitive, to simplify the process. What you just says, mark MCQs very quickly by just putting the phone over the papers. I don't know remember what's going on for the core business in terms of education solutions for PEP students. But let us see what the company's leaders bring out in short order as a disclosure and update to the market, because Edifocal, has been listed for about 3 years now. Listed in March 2022, and they've struggled to complete their audited financial requirements within the stipulated 60-day period. Yes, there are content shortages and everything in between, but the bigger companies like Grace Kennedy and Surgical Group, which have multiple businesses that meet the requirements, and it's just that a company has to prepare itself for its audit with external auditors to ensure that it can be completed within the particular time frame.
But apart from not meeting the deadline to submit those filings, Edufocal has been struggling as well. Some of our viewers are even questioning whether this is still a viable company in 2025, which I disagree with, because they were a viable company before COVID. And so finding a way to pivot and still remain relevant in 2025 is, but what is the core of their problem? Like, why are they having financial problems right now?
So the way I would describe it from a very similar perspective is what I call learning pains. So a lot of persons think that, as a company, the more sales you do, the better your business is. But one caveat that, I saw for Edifocal, and it actually showed up in the financials, is that it was doing all this business, but the collection of the receivables was an issue. And because of the receivables collection issue, they ended up having to write down those receivables, and because I never got that cash, they were in turn, required to scale down and size down as a result. And you made a very good point. The COVID boom is now gone. Kids are back in school. The Clean Up Orchard story today, looking at the Pembroke Hall first formers, and where they pointed at, about 70% of the students cannot read. And they generate buzz on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And, there is a purpose for companies like Edifocal to try and assist with, developing the nation's minds. But I think that Edifocal needs to learn a little bit from its own mistakes and past errors, in terms of being not just a listed company, but just being a growing company. Because a lot of people think that, hey, bottom line is profit, everything is fine. No. Please look at the cash flow statement. It will tell you a lot that the income statement will not tell you. Remember, depreciation, amortization, if you have intangible assets, that is not cash. Yeah, the company collects receivables, it's increasing receivables. How is it financing that increase in receivables? So I mentioned all these points to point out that, even with the tax break Edifocal has, it still, did not have that perfect process in terms of collecting receivables and, the way it engaged with its clients. So let us see what this company really brings to the table in terms of a discussion to the public, because the company did publish an unaudited Q4 set of numbers. They did make a loss for the overall year among assets. So let us see, when the company does get the chance to publish its audited financials and its first quarter report, because both those are actually outstanding.
We have a few questions from the audience, so let's take some of those. Ryan says, you wrote an article that they will have to repay the tax benefit. Is this true?
So just to give clarity, I never said that they provide tax benefit. So there is a provision in the Income Tax Amendment Act that says that you can be liable if you're suspended or delisted from the JSE within 15 years. So that actual process never taking place, basically based on what I've seen in company financials. So the companies have been suspended, like iCreate, IronRock, Edufocal, MFS. I can't remember which companies have been suspended in recent times, but I was suspended. I have not seen any disclosure in their audited financials about TAG coming to them and saying, hey, yes, back a tax benefit. I do recall, going through T-Tech's takeover documents, where they did mention that because they're going private, T-Tech did list in 2016, March. The fact that they listed at the end of February 2024, they had a liability to pay back to TAG because they're only listed for 8 years, and you have to go at least 15 years, to get that full tax remission benefit in terms of there being no contingent liability being attached. So although Edifocal has been suspended, I'm not sure, if TAG has, approached Edifocal in terms of paying back on any tax remission that benefited from any profits which have derived in the prior 2 years as a listed company.
Next question comes from Learn, Grow, Invest. From what I remember, they had a few key partnerships. Whatever happened with those? Have we had any update on those key partnerships?
No, and it's unfortunate because these projects, were good initiatives, had good, social responsibility focus, but it's hard to do all these projects if you don't have the resources or the cash to really tackle them. So I remember the Jamaica Library program was one of those mentioned initiatives. I remember even, another initiative with respect to Nigeria. But I haven't heard any updates on them, creating university portals for corporate companies. We just haven't heard any updates. It's unfortunate, but the company has to survive first before it can look at those partnerships.
There's another point that you raised, I think it was in your article as well, David, and it has to do with the on-time filing of these audited financial statements. We've discussed it before on this program too. So the JSE has said that on-time filing by main market companies dropped from 85% in 2020 to 64% in 2024. And for junior market companies, it's even worse. So it dropped from 92% to just 43%. So less than half of the junior market companies are filing their financial statements on time. What is causing this delay?
So the JSC Armody, kind of hinted at the issues that they would have discovered during their research, and it's in the same story. There is an issue or a shortage of, professionals in the auditing space, because accounting is just not auditing. So accountants, also do assurance work. They also do taxation. They do due diligence. So auditing is just one branch of, the whole accounting gamut. And, persons have not been as interested to go into that sphere because the competition probably isn't as great, probably exhausted because a lot of hard work, and if you don't have many people to do the revision process or to do the verification, it takes longer for you to complete the audit. So just to educate persons, the company prepares the financial statements, not the auditors. So the auditor's style framework for the auditor financials might be the same across multiple companies, but they don't prepare the financials. The companies prepare the financials, auditors come in and do particular tests. They want to see evidence of controls where cash is concerned, evidence of controls in just IT processes and so forth. So for example, your company says that they did $100 million revenue last year, right? I will go and say, all right, who are the top 5 customers? Do they make up 20% of my revenue and so on and so forth? I then contact those customers and say, hey, did you do this service to this customer? Did you pay them? I'll go to your bank and say, hey, bank, can you verify for me, or provide the verification of, the company's financial bank statements, for example. So auditors are checks, the bank statement match report have been provided by the company. So that entire process takes time and work and effort. And if there are people on board, and if you're not spending the top line as a small company, for example, to expedite that process, then your numbers are going to be delayed because the larger companies like Grayscale and NCB and so on, Sagicors, they do audits throughout the year with their auditors. So it's not a mad rush all at once, after December 31, but they engage them throughout the year and they get their work done, but it costs a lot more money. That's for resources, paying for those staff, paying for those billable hours. Then, one thing that's also indicated in the RMO's investigation was, the fact that the change in accounting principles has become a headache as well. So back in 2019, when we had the transition to IFRS 9, which was an accounting standard related to receivables and credit-related items, most companies in the JSC reported their financial lists in that period. When in the past, they are all on time or filing on time. That was a massive changeover. Then in 2023, 2024 is when the audited period comes in the audited for 2023 numbers, but most companies that are filing for their 2023 financials, insurance company in particular, most of them are late. To the point that even IROC insurance company got suspended on the JSC junior market because it passed the 90-day limit for submitting its financials. JN General Accident, almost all the insurance companies last year late to their audited financials, and it was because of the transition from IFRS 4 to IFRS 17 in how they measure insurance contracts. So as the standards keep changing, it requires more resources. It requires more, people. And the thing is, even today, someone shared with me a job posting from Caribbean Jobs where Sagicor Life is actually hiring an accounting officer just for IFRS 17. So that's from an accounting standpoint in terms of the accounting standards. And the large complex transactions, that has an impact on completing the audit. So when Separate acquired AS Braden, it was done as a leverage buyout, right? That process had to get independent third-party evaluators to give their commentary as to the value of the transaction. Remember the point out again, the auditors rely on evidence to give their opinion. If I have the evidence, I'm going to give my opinion. So that valuation took longer than expected because another thing in the Caribbean is valuators are short in certain areas, similar to accountants. Because of that long delay, Separate was also delayed in publishing its consolidated financials. So the company's financials have been finished for a long time, and it's standalone audit. But for the overall group, in order for that to be completed, they require that valuation report to be provided to their auditors in Trinidad, so that Jamaican auditors can approve the consolidated financials here in Jamaica. So it's an entirely involved process. I'm not an accountant, so I'm just giving my very simple perspective of how the process actually works. But you can't just say, all right, company, JS going to suspend me. They send up on some numbers, and then we just correct it afterwards. You cannot do that. The auditor has its own liability associated with giving out its audit opinion and doing its job. So you cannot just sign up on numbers and then correct it afterward just because you don't want to get suspended in the JSC or by a regulator. You have
So
to
do
get
we
it right.
have other companies at risk now? Because this is a widespread issue,
So,
obviously.
so let me give some context. So, Fastridge submitted their audit financials, or they're submitted probably on May 30, but they're published last week Monday on June 2. Fastridge itself was at the end of the 90-day period, that grace period after the submission deadline is audit financials. So they missed suspension. Pulse and Caribbean Cream, same thing. Submitted their audit and quarterly financials on the day before the JS could consider suspension. Kintai, Kintai from an iCreate, Productivity Solutions, and another company in the JS Junior Market, they're all late to their 2024 audited financials as well. But the thing is, based on their filing period, the JSC kind of considered them for suspension until the end of this month. But yeah, a lot of companies are facing that issue, and it's not going to get any better because I mean, really, Kalila, as much as I enjoy reading financial statements and going through these numbers and everything, I feel sorry for the accountants. Like when person say they're working, into the 12 of the morning, like in overtime for this, some person say, they're getting probably 100, 150 grand per month for the work that they're being given. It's depressing. And the reality is you have to get, your CP or ACC designation and then become a chartered accountant to your local membership body. And, if you're working at a big audit for like a big four, it can take you years to become a partner. And when you can just instead go to, for example, work at a financial company, become a CFO and get a bigger paycheck, even with the stress, it just works out much better that way. So it's not going to get any better. So for companies right now, it's all about, how do you prepare for your audit? You have to do this every year. How do you prepare? You have to, work with auditors. Is it that you have to make them come and do a 6 months audit for the 6 months period, and the audit in the 6 months period? You need to engage them throughout the year. What kind of resources that you need to provide from early? And it's about engagement because auditors are going to be stressed because they're dealing with audit financials, tax season. You have to just work with them early and quickly and say, hey, how do we get our financials prepared on time? Because whether you're in USA, Jamaica, Canada, or even Timbuktu, once you're listed, you have to prepare the audit financials and you should do it on time so that the public itself can benefit from that information. Oh yes, Access Financial Services as well. Their audit financials are delayed because of the cyber attack they experienced back in February. So they say their numbers should be ready by the end of July. And the reason they say end of July is because after that, the JC can suspend them from trading. And because Access is delayed to their audit financials, Proven it also to their audit financials as well. Because remember, Proven it has associated stake in Access Financial Services as well.